the gentleman did not tell us is whether or not he thinks it's a good idea for U.S. taxpayers to be spending billions of dollars on an extremist government in Israel whose stated policy is to starve children. So the issue is not who started the war. Everyone knows who started the war. The issue is whether you commit war atrocities, criminal war acts, by punishing an entire people for the acts of a terrorist organization.
On October 7th of 2023, families, mothers, fathers were sitting at home enjoying a peaceful existence in one of the most difficult places on earth to live. They had a day planned of joy at a festival. And what happened? People came over and savagely murdered children, raped women, took hundreds of hostages, killed more Jews than at any time since the Holocaust.
Ah, yes. The Senate circus is back in town, starring Bernie Sanders and Senator Bernie Moreno. You see, Moreno's gonna open up with a classic move. Slam the October 7 panic button like it's the last argument on earth. Cue the violins, flash the trauma footage, and shut down all logic. But Bernie Sanders? He came armed with moral receipts, calling out Netanyahu as a war criminal, torching AIPAC's corruption machine, and exposing America's sick fantasy of turning Gaza into a billionaire resort while kids die under rubble. Senator Moreno tried to cry louder than Gaza's death toll, painting Israel as the eternal victim while ignoring the facts that 60% of the actual victims are women and children in Gaza, bombed, starved, and erased with US dollars. Bernie Sanders didn't debate, he detonated. He made it clear this isn't self-defense, it's state-funded ethnic cleansing with lobbyists writing the script. So if you're still falling for the "but Hamas" narrative, this video might hurt your feelings, and it should, because Bernie Sanders just told the truth most senators are too gutless to whisper. Let's get into it.
President, given this reality, nobody should have any doubts that Netanyahu is a war criminal. Just like his counterparts in Hamas, he has a massive amount of innocent blood on his hands. And now, Netanyahu and his extremist ministers have a new plan. On top of everything else that has been done, they have a new plan, and that is to indefinitely reoccupy all of Gaza, flatten the few buildings that are still standing, and force the entire population of 2.2 million people into a single tiny area where hired U.S. security contractors will distribute rations to the survivors. Israeli officials are quite open about the goal here: to force Palestinians to leave for other countries, quote, in line with President Trump's vision for Gaza, end quote, as one Israeli official said this week. Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich said this week that, quote, Gaza will be entirely destroyed, end quote, and that its population will, quote, leave in great numbers, end quote. For many in Netanyahu's extremist government, this has been the plan all along. It's called ethnic cleansing. This would be a terrible tragedy, no matter where in the world it was happening or why it was happening, whatever the causes of it might be. But what makes this tragedy so much worse for us in America is that it is our government, the United States government, that is absolutely complicit in creating and sustaining this humanitarian disaster. It didn't just happen. We are a significant part of creating this humanitarian disaster. Last year alone, the United States provided $18 billion in military aid to Israel. This year, the Trump administration has approved $12 billion more in bombs and weapons. And for months, Trump has offered blanket support for Netanyahu. More than that, he has repeatedly said that the United States will actually take over Gaza after the war. that the Palestinian people will be driven, forcibly expelled from their homeland. And the United States will redevelop it into what Trump calls, quote, the Riviera of the Middle East, end quote. A playground for billionaires. Think about it. 2.2 desperate people who have been bombed and starved and driven from their homes are now about to be forcibly expelled from their territory into God knows where, so that Trump and his friends can build a Riviera for the billionaire class. Mr. President, this war has killed or injured more than 170,000 people in Gaza. It has cost American taxpayers well over $20 billion in the last year. And right now, as we speak, thousands of children are starving to death. And the U.S. president is actively encouraging the ethnic cleansing of over 2 million people. Now, given that reality, one might think that there would be a vigorous discussion right here in the Senate. Do we really want to spend billions of taxpayer dollars starving children in Gaza? A real vigorous debate. I want to hear why that is a good use. We have people sleeping out on the streets of America 2 blocks from the nation's capital. You tell me why spending billions of dollars to support Netanyahu's war and starving children is a good idea. I'd love to hear it. But, Mr. President, we are not having that debate. And let me suggest to you why I think we are not having that debate. And that is because we have a corrupt campaign finance system that allows organizations like AIPAC to set the agenda here in Washington with regard to what happens in the Middle East. In the last election cycle, AIPAC's PAC and Super PAC spent nearly $127 million combined on campaign contributions. And the fact is that if you are a member of Congress and you vote against Netanyahu's war in Gaza, AIPAC is there to punish you with millions of dollars in advertisements to see that you get defeated. One might think that in a democracy there would be a vigorous debate on an issue of such consequence. But because of our corrupt campaign finance system, which impacts us in so many ways, on this issue, people are literally afraid to stand up, because if they do, suddenly you're going to have all kinds of ads coming in to your district to defeat you. And sadly, I must confess that this political corruption works. Many of my colleagues will privately express their horror at Netanyahu's war crimes, but will do or say very little publicly about it. Mr. President, history will not forgive our complicity in this nightmare. The time is long overdue for us to end our support for Netanyahu's destruction of the Palestinian people. We must not put another nickel into Netanyahu's war machine. We must demand an immediate ceasefire, a surge in humanitarian aid, the release of the hostages, and the rebuilding of Gaza, not for billionaires to enjoy their Riviera there, but rebuilding Gaza for the Palestinian people. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Ohio.
I've been in the United States Senate now for a total of 125 days. I've seen some outrageous comments over the last 125 days. My colleague has been here exactly 12,000 days more than I have. And let me just set the record straight. On October 7th of 2023, families, mothers, fathers were sitting at home enjoying a peaceful existence in one of the most difficult places on earth to live. They had a day planned of joy at a festival. And what happened? People came over and savagely murdered children, raped women, took hundreds of hostages, killed more Jews than at any time since the Holocaust. What you just heard for the last 15 minutes could be summarized as the absolute propaganda of Hamas. Let me just be clear. This war started by Hamas. It could end today by Hamas if they released every last hostage, including an American citizen. We're sitting here in the United States Senate and not even saying a word of the fact that there's a U.S. citizen being held hostage by a terrorist group in the Middle East. That is outrageous. That should be at the top of the agenda. Why have civilians been killed in Gaza? Because they hide weapons in hospitals, in schools, in homes. Hamas is the enemy, not our greatest ally, which is Israel. I was just there 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was there. You know, there's almost no Israeli that hasn't seen a mom, a dad, a son, a grandson, granddaughter that hasn't been either injured or killed to protect their country. The fact that we are disparaging our greatest ally at this level is completely outrageous. I had plans to go home, see my wife and kids. But I rose today because I cannot stay silent after listening to that kind of nonsense spewed here in the United States Senate. It's a disgrace, and we should not ever forget that Israel is fighting the war that we would otherwise fight. And with that, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Vermont.
Thank you. Number one, if the gentleman had heard my remarks, I, of course, talked about the need to release the hostages, and I talked about who started the war, which is the terrorist organization called Hamas, led by war criminals. There is no debate about that. But what the gentleman did not tell us is whether or not he thinks it's a good idea for U.S. taxpayers to be spending billions of dollars on an extremist government in Israel whose stated policy is to starve children, whether or not he thinks it is a good idea to cut off all humanitarian aid getting into Gaza right now. No medicine, no clean water, no health care facilities open. So the issue is not who started the war. Everyone knows who started the war. The issue is whether you commit war atrocities, criminal war acts, by punishing an entire people for the acts of a terrorist organization. Did Israel have a right to defend itself? Yes, nobody denies that. Did it have a right to kill over 50,000 people, 60% of whom are women, children, and the elderly? No. Did it have a right to injure 112,000 people, to destroy almost every housing unit in Gaza, to bomb hundreds of schools and every university in Gaza? No. Israel had a right to defend itself, but it does not have the right to engage in ethnic cleansing and to starve children.
Bernie Sanders didn't just destroy Senator Bernie Moreno, he dragged him through every war crime he tried to whitewash, while Moreno clutched his script and cried savagery on repeat. Bernie was out here naming names, citing policies, and exposing America's sick, complicity in Gaza's genocide. Bernie Sanders shattered the Israel can do no wrong narrative by calling out Netanyahu as a war criminal, not mincing words, and laying bare that fantasy plan to turn Gaza into a billionaire's beach resort after starving, bombing, and cleansing over 2 million people. No senator has dared say it that bluntly until now. You see, Moreno screeched about Hamas. Savage attack. But let's talk about savage. Babies decapitated in Gaza. No actual footage from the Israeli side on October 7th. Families burned alive. Children left limbless under rubble. All documented. All funded US tax dollars. Yet, somehow, Moreno finds the moral compass to scream about one day while ignoring almost 2 years of televised massacre. Bernie called out the hypocrisy without flinching. So ask yourself, who really sounded unhinged? The guy parroting AIPAC talking points like a malfunctioning AI? Or the one demanding we stop bankrolling war crimes with our money and our silence? Drop your thoughts below. Was Bernie Sanders right to call this what it is? Ethnic cleansing? Or are we still pretending this is a self-defense with a PR budget? Like, subscribe, and share this because mainstream media won't touch this truth with a 10-foot pole, but we will every single time. Catch you later.